Hey everyone, you're listening to the Active Turnkey Podcast, a podcast designed for hands-off, passive real estate rental investors. In the Active Turnkey Podcast, you'll hear Tom Olson and Jared Stoutmeister discuss all things turnkey rentals with other turnkey providers, service providers, and rental investors. Our goal is to help you reach your financial freedom and whatever comes after that. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Active Turnkey Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Stoutmeister, and I have with me not Tom Olson. This is not Tom. This is Adam Burau. And so today's podcast is going to be a little bit different. When we have a guest speaker, we talk a little bit about what they do. And now Adam actually works here in one of our companies, but it's a new company. It's called Conduit Capital. And so he's going to tell us a little bit about that today. And so Adam, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jared.
Absolutely. His first podcast have you ever been on a podcast before?
This is my first one ever.
Podcast. So before I did Active Turnkey, I started recording for like a like a Bible study thing I was doing with a friend. And I think we recorded like 3 podcasts, and they were like really long and probably should have been dumped. And they never were published, for the record. So I mean, I like to think I had some experience before I did the Active Turnkey Podcast. I was on a couple Good Success podcasts, and just a couple before that. But no, I'm happy you're on it.
Yeah, I know the stakes are high, but I'm ready to perform.
So it's a lot of pressure, but I think Adam's up to the task. He really is.
Absolutely.
And so Adam is newer to the company. You've been with us about a year and a half or so. Is that right?
Yeah, a little over a year.
Okay. And now when I say company, I'm talking about the Olson Group network companies. He does work in a part-time role with our acquisitions team, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But he's been doing that now, well, pretty much since you came in, right? You were doing that.
Yeah, actually, right when I came in, I was being double trained on the lending and also acquisitions.
Yeah, so he still does that right now, and eventually he's going to be moving out probably by end of 2021. He'll be full-time in the Conduit Capital, solely focused on that. But before we get into Conduit Capital, what all that is and what it means, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
Sure, yeah. So I'm from Grand Blanc, Michigan, which is about 3.5, 4 hours away from here. So I'm a Michigan fan, go blue, and I'm living it up in the Chicago area now.
Yeah, he's also a Lions fan and a Tiger fan.
I mean, because I have to be. Like,
what else is up there?
Red Wings.
Red Wings. They had a run. They had like a 20-something year playoff run, right?
Yeah, every year I'm ready to get my heart broken again. Yeah. It's just what being a Michigan fan is about.
Well, I'm cocky right now as a Bears fan because we haven't played a game yet. As of time of recording, we haven't played a game yet. When this gets pushed out, the first game is in a couple days. But yeah, I'm a Bears fan, and my heart's not usually broken because usually they're not in a position to break it. But that's another podcast, I think. So we'll see how that goes.
Maybe start something new.
Yeah. So tell us about your experience before Olson Group. Tell us about what you did when you went to school, things like that.
Sure. Yeah. So I got my undergraduate degree from Miami University, not the one in Florida. That's the one in Ohio.
Not the U. Okay.
So a little chillier than Florida. But I got my degree in marketing there from the business school. And then after college, my first job was as a district manager for a large retailer. I worked for a while and decided that retail really wasn't for me. Just wasn't an industry I was super interested in. And so I left there, and I was kind of just on the job hunt for a little bit.
So our finance CFO, Chrisney, she kind of dropped something before the podcast that you like to name drop. Was that a joke, or is that?
It's okay. No, I guess we'll find out later in the podcast. But
okay,
if
well,
you push me enough, you never know.
You said a retailer, and in that situation, would have been a good opportunity for you to drop what company that was. Was that not on purpose? Was it on purpose? You didn't share that.
I mean, no, because I'm sure some people go there. So, and my experience maybe wasn't the best, so I don't want to discourage anyone from shopping there. So we'll keep it a mystery. And
now that says a lot about him. So if you haven't fallen in love with Adam yet, you will, just because that thing. He's
great character, really.
Just high level,
and
high
humble
level
too.
Very, very humble. So, so it's of course, it's interesting, and so tell us about that. So you're working at a company like we talked about a second ago, a retailer, and you didn't like your experience. And so to the point where you're like, I'm done. Tell us a little bit how you got here. Like what brought you here?
Yeah. So, I want to say I left, like right before Christmas of 2020. And then in January 2021, I went to a quarterly meeting for, a multifamily office that my family had worked with. And I actually was the first intern for this multifamily office when they were starting up when I was in college, and I reached out to my old boss who runs this company and just let him know, hey, I'm looking forward to being at your meeting in January. I'm actually on the job hunt. So if you have any recommendations of people that I need to talk to, let me know. And I really want to, explore what else is out there. And the meeting came around, and in his opening remarks, he actually had a PowerPoint slide of a picture of me and his wife from when we were like making name tags for the very first event that they had. And he mentioned to this room full of people, hey, our first intern, Adam Burau, is here and he's on the job market. You'd be stupid not to hire him. And I was sitting there shocked, and I was sitting with some of my family members, and they were like, did you know he was going to do this? And I, of course, didn't. But then after the first meeting, I was talking with some people that were around me, and Tom Olson came up to me and he just said, hey, Adam, I have always wanted to start this lending company and I have some of the foundation in place, but I want you to run it. So will you? And I was, thinking, I was like, well, geez, I'm coming from retail. Like, sure. Why not? So I said yes from there, and that kind of started our working relationship.
Now, so Adam kind of came in on like a trial basis, but everybody was on trial, right? Like both parties.
It was. It was really a get to know you period, I guess would probably be the best way to put it. I actually, I had known Tom Olson long before he talked to me at this meeting, because actually my dad and my uncle have both invested with Tom and with Jared. So I had heard a lot about how things kind of went on down here, and my dad and my uncle spoke so highly of Tom and Jared. So I was kind of like, okay, well, I want to go see what they're all about. Is it really as great as my my family is saying? And so I came down here, and it was really a trial basis of getting to know each other to see, one, if this was something I wanted to do, but also if I would work out here, if I would merge with the culture, if it would work and whatnot. And I think it's safe to say I merged pretty well.
Yeah, I think so. Now I'm really curious. I mean, I know I have a good idea, what your dad and uncle think of Tom, but I haven't heard about what you said that they've said a lot about me, and this is news.
Oh, all good things. I mean, they just usually, anytime I go home when I'm leaving, they when I'm on my way back, they just tell me, hey, make sure you're keeping Jared in line.
I'll have to follow up on that and just see if I can reach more for praise. That's what I'm looking for.
Sure.
So
yeah.
I'll let them know that we had this and see what comes from it. But no, that's really good. And so it's a really interesting how it came together. And I remember Tom even describing the situation. I was like, wow, okay, that kind of came together quickly and not typically. And so you had a marketing degree. And that has come to play here. So even now, Adam does help lead up our marketing department. Particularly, you would say, I don't know, how would you describe it?
As far as my role, kind of what I do. Yeah. So, well, first, it's been great to actually, use my degree. A lot of, friends that I graduated with, they put all this time into their degrees and they're not using them, which happens actually quite a bit. So I'm glad that I kind of get to put mine to use. And I'd say a majority of what we've had to do up to this point, as far as tasks, have been mainly digital marketing. So we put a lot of emphasis on website building and kind of exposure on different social media platforms and just kind of getting the product of Olsen Group out there to more people. So that's been the big opportunity that we've been working on. And as we get, more of that foundational stuff established, then we want to move into more specific kind of niche marketing to what we're looking for.
And it's been good. We've definitely had some improvements. So if you got to see some of our earlier stuff on podcasts, Amelia, she works with us as well. She's come in, does a great job with our design portion. She's very gifted in that area, so she's really up the game. And then like you mentioned, our website. So all of our companies have had new websites during that time. And Olsen, for the longest time, Olsen Group didn't really have an updated website. It was more geared toward wholesaling back with what we were doing years and years ago. And so bringing him in here to bring that to get that updated has been good. And then we're actually rolling out our Olsen Group Buyer's Guide. Just kind of gives you information. So some of the guests that come in on a Friday that I would host, it kind of gives them some of that information and tells about that. So all these are all different things that he's been helping and raising our game on that side. So that's been pretty exciting. But we're not here to talk about marketing and not technically acquisitions, although we'll bring it up a little bit later. But we're here to learn about Conduit Capital. So Adam, tell us, what is Conduit Capital?
Sure. So I guess I could start with why Conduit Capital was started and kind of Tom's thought process behind that. So Tom has always wanted to have a lending company because he really believes in being a conduit, not a bucket. And if you're a repeat listener, I'm sure Tom has said that once or twice. Couple times. And so the name is perfect, but basically the role that we play is we are the conduit between lenders and real estate investors. So what that means is that we connect our network of private lenders who want their money deployed in short-term loans, and we connect those people with real estate investors, outside real estate investors in the area, mostly in Northwest Indiana. And we just coordinate the whole loan on behalf of the lender to make a passive investment for them. Now,
you mentioned the name, and behind every name has some meaning and things. And Tom has talked about be a conduit, not a bucket. So naturally, that is where part of where the name came in for Conduit Capital. But there were some other names that we had.
Okay, Jared always rags on me for this because
always.
You can't confine the creative process, and so there were some proposed names that didn't stick.
No.
And I'm not going to mention them here because I don't think that's necessary.
Appropriate. Yeah.
Or appropriate. Okay, some of them were not appropriate.
Yeah.
Regardless, we just left them in the past. We have a good name now, and that's all that matters.
No, it was really good, but it's like how do you get to that name? It's pretty interesting, but this one's good. I think we got it solidified, and Adam was really excited about this name.
Really, yeah,
compared to the others for sure.
There was some proposed stuff that almost happened that didn't.
Yeah. A couple were like. The classic thing there that everyone seems to do now, but it is Conduit Capital. And so now, what type of borrower should be interested in Conduit Capital?
Sure. So I'd say the type of borrower that we really like working with. Obviously, we'll work with anyone, but borrowers who are new to real estate investing and maybe don't have connections to private money. The benefit of using private money, obviously, is that you don't have your own capital invested. So you're able to do more deals. And so we have a lot of borrowers who kind of fall into that category, and also real estate investors who just want more access to private funds. We created a streamlined process so that we're able to keep our lenders secure while also being able to make the application process for our real estate investors super streamlined and easy, so that we can really just do as many deals as possible. I always tell our new borrowers, our goal is to form as many relationships based on trust as we can with real estate investors, because once we get paid back on one loan, we want to do one after another, because really both parties win when we work together. And so
that's really good. Tom mentioned that just in the last podcast that, we want to work with people who want there to be like a win-win situation where, not one person takes the cake and he got the best part. And that's just not the type of people we want to work with. And we don't want to win every property either when we're talking about turnkey properties. So we don't want to make a ton of money and then the investor not have a good investment. Mm-hmm. Now, in the end, we have talked about the name, the Active Turnkey Podcast. We talk about that it's the best way to buy rentals. But typically an investor, a real estate investor, can do that on his own. He can go out. He can secure a property through many different channels of acquisition channels. He can find a contractor that does a great job. He can work with a lender that helps with the refinance, and then he can do that and then redeploy. He can find a property manager locally that can help him manage his property. He can do all those things. However, the difficulty is doing it well, particularly the first time when you're entering into a market. And some of the listeners and viewers, this isn't new to you from what we're talking about. And if you come in and I host you, I'll tell you then too that eventually you're going to get to the point where you will be able to acquire deals on your own. And you'll want to do it that way. It'll be the right way and a good way to do it, and in many cases the best way. But what we do, Olson Group does, is we do limit the areas where there's a lot of risk and opportunities for problems. So when you do buy a turnkey property, it's you're kind of working on a few of those relationships initially without having to have them all. So you don't have to necessarily find a property that may or may not be cash flow or may or may not be able to purchase a specific price. If you buy from us a turnkey property, first of all, it'll have to be appraised, so it'll have to be at market value, but it's already cash flowing from day one. It's got a full rehab, so you don't have to worry about the acquisition process or the rehab process. You do work with a lender that you would work on your refinance down the road. So you're working with your lenders and you're securing a property manager. And so it's a few of those steps right away. And so we'd say that, long term, you should be learning and getting that experience to where you can buy on your own and you don't need to buy necessarily from a turnkey provider. Of course, you still want to use that property manager, but it sounds to me like that's the same scenario here, where eventually they're going to go out on their own, find their own lending opportunities, things like that. But at this point, it really kind of helps guide them and teach them what to do.
Absolutely. So yeah, we love being that resource for the newer real estate investor, where not only can we provide you access to private money, but another benefit we offer is industry experience. So part of our application process is that the real estate investor will fill out our application, but they'll also submit comps that justify the ARV they think that the property will be sold at, as well as repair and rehab budgets. So when they send that stuff over, we're able to work with our team to decide, one, if the comps are accurate, and in some cases we have relationships with agents like Tom's wife Becky, where we can pull our own comparables to see, okay, is this really what it can sell for, or is crossing any main streets and stuff like that. We can also take a look at the rehab budget to see, okay, does it really take $500 to rehab a whole bathroom, or does it maybe take $5,000? I mean,
sure.
There's all sorts of coaching and mentoring that can happen in that stage. So as a new real estate investor, you can have some feedback on, okay, are your estimates accurate, or do we need to revisit that? And so not only does it help the real estate investor, but it also helps the lender too, because they can be assured that they're not overfunding a deal. So
it sounds like they do protect you in a sense, you as the person in the middle, you're protecting both, because you're kind of educating that new guy, and it's almost learning how they approach a deal. So they have to, if you're trying to find a lender and you go straight to a RIA, you find a guy who's looking to deploy some money, and you send him a deal, and right off the bat you have some major mistakes. That's a learning experience. And also you're protecting the lender because now, they're not going through that whole underwriting process. You're doing it for them, bring it to them nice and tight and packaged. And they're really not even dealing with building that relationship necessarily up front with those who may not know what they're doing.
Exactly. I mean, everyone has to start somewhere,
Sure.
whether you're a lender or whether you're a borrower.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be messy. And so what we try to do is mitigate as much risk as possible by helping with the due diligence on both ends.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you're never going to think of everything or catch everything. But by working in the industry so much and having the connections that we do, we're able to outsource as much knowledge and expertise as we can to ensure that both parties have a positive experience and an outcome that benefits both parties.
So what problems are you solving for for both, for the investor and the lender? What problems are you solving for each one of them?
Sure. So as far as the investor, kind of coming off of what we were just talking about, it's mainly the access to private funds so that you can do, the general investor can do more deals because they're not having to deploy their own funds, then wait for that property to close, and then to deploy their funds again. We want to build those relationships of trust so that we can just keep deploying over and over again in the future. And then also with the real estate investor, obviously providing that that level of coaching and extra layer of due diligence. With our lenders, our main goal with lenders is to provide as passive an investment as possible. Because basically all of the underwriting that's done, all of the due diligence into the deal itself, normally should be done by the lender. So if you're just a lender at a RIA meeting and you're looking for people to invest with, all of the stuff that we do application-wise and underwriting-wise, lenders should be doing also. So now that we're kind of the middleman, we're able to do all that due diligence. And when I send a deal out to our lenders, I like to include all of the information necessary so that the lender can just make a yes or no decision if that's something they're interested in. Obviously, if they want more information, I always supply it, but I really like to provide as hands-off of a product as possible so that the lenders are just collecting their monthly checks and then get paid back.
What's the percentage of deals that just don't make it through underwriting? They don't make it to the lender?
I would say very little.
Okay.
I would, however, on most deals that we get sent, there is usually back and forth on the numbers. So a borrower may send me a list of comps saying that this house's ARV is $100,000. But after pulling our own comps, looking at it, it's much more conservative to fund this with a 95 ARV in mind. So I'd say that happens a lot, and that way it protects the lender, but it also helps the borrower realize, okay, this is what should be expected for that.
Cool. I've actually used Conduit Capital to fund a few deals, and so I have had up to 3 other lenders, but I used Conduit Capital for scaling. So I am doing more of the Burr method personally right now, and with private funding, and so depending on what my lenders have available, and if maybe there's some discomfort, because again, if I am investing in Gary myself. I've mentioned that before. I think my dad and I, our last 11 units are in Gary, and so some investors, some lenders may not like that. They may prefer to see their money in like a Crown Point, Maryville, Hammond, if you're familiar with our market, those places, the C+ or better neighborhoods, or they want to charge more. And so that makes sense too. So for me, I may make a decision based upon that, but I was able to I did 2 loans through Conduit Capital. And again, it allowed me to scale And so I think at one time, I think I had like 6 deals going on, and 2 of those were through Conduit Capital. So that helped me. And so, some people maybe their first deal and they don't really know anybody. For me, it was I had a few lenders, but I wanted more options. Now, interesting. So we mentioned before that Adam does work with Olson Group. So our company, Olson Group, that provides the turnkey product. He does work part-time, you would say?
Yeah, I'd say like it's a kind of just a different hat that I wear.
Okay. Yeah. So he works with us and he is on the front end. So, and many times investors, when they come in, one of the questions they ask is, where are you getting houses? What type of channels are you using? And I usually tell them any of them and all opportunities we have to do that. Now, so Adam does help us with that. Now, can you give me an idea about how that has helped you as you work alongside your the underwriting department? How has that helped you in the last year and a half or so learn how to vet a deal or to vet for both sides, I guess you can say?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it's helped tremendously in my knowledge of how real estate works, but more specifically how Northwest Indiana real estate works. No matter where you go, different areas have, I guess, different behaviors almost in how the market acts. And that's no different for areas like, Gary compared to Crown Point, compared to Hammond, or even compared to LaPorte in Michigan City. They're all different. Since Olson Group buys all over Northwest Indiana, I've been able to see how these different markets behave and kind of what works for each one. That's from a comp side, so looking in what stuff is selling for. Because one thing I've actually learned with comps, and actually a frustration that I had when I first started, was that we would have a house that we were looking into, and so I would look into what other houses in the area have sold for high dollar amounts, and so I would just I'll just take a quarter mile radius and call it good, and I'd send it over to Jared, and he's like, well, you crossed a highway and there's some railroad tracks, and so they weren't accurate. Because for some reason in my perfect world, we can't get the highest dollar amount for everything we put out there, which I still think is crazy, but I've learned now. But anyways, so stuff like that has really helped me see how the different areas work and what that means for determining comps. And then on the repairs side of things, I've been able to walk through hundreds of houses with our construction team and also with Tom's wife, Becky, to get a really good idea of what repairs should cost and what things may be needed in a house to get it ready to be a turnkey. Now, obviously, when working with real estate investors, the end product may be a little different than what Olson Group would do as far as if layouts are changed or this or that. But as far as the general cost for how much a repair should be, I've gotten a great background in that as well. Yeah,
it's interesting because in your setting, now, of course, Olson Group, if you've listened to us at all, we do try to put the higher end finishes, quartz countertops and stainless steel appliances or black appliances, subway tile, backsplashes and surrounds in the bathroom, different things like that. However, we do have very good relationships with vendors locally, so that means that cost will go down a little bit. And so maybe somebody who's starting off thinks he's going to get the same rate of materials as we get, and they probably won't. And so there are different ways you can measure that. And just to kind of add a little tag there, Adam talked about crossing roads and things like that, major roads and highways and train tracks. And in some cases that does not change, but if you have enough experience, you'll notice that in many cases that does separate a neighborhood, and it can drastically change the value. I had a wholesaler, a very prominent, investor, flipper, a very prominent one in our market, questioned us on a deal in Hammond one time, and we just he questioned our ARV pretty hard, and I more or less just told him, like, look, I mean, if you look at the comps, everything on this side of this particular road is selling for X around that, and everything on this side of this main road is selling for the other for a higher amount, but this is on the low end side. And so, I mean, really, we had to take that into account, even though it may have been within a mile or a half mile or whatever. And so that's just a little tidbit there, that when you're investing and you're doing your due diligence, maybe on the front end, and you're an investor and you're sending your deal to a lender, you want to take these, I like to call them line of demarcations, these areas that these lines that drastically change value or rent or whatever, because it does change what the deal will look like. And the last thing you really want to do is misrepresent that information, maybe ignorantly or whatever, and then later it doesn't work out for you as the borrower, or it doesn't work out well for your lender. Because in the end, again, if you're looking to, as an investor, as a borrower, to find lenders, you really want to do your best to provide a good experience, which is, again, what you're talking about, what we do in the middle. But also you want to show them that you know what you're doing. And when your numbers don't compute, in fact, probably the best thing for you to do is to see your numbers do better. So like your after repair values, maybe you get a better appraisal than anticipated, as opposed to $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 below value. But anyway, that's just an insight there, and that's something that Adam has mentioned and works through, but there's some truth there. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about, so far, it's Conduit Capital is newer. So tell everybody how 2021 has gone so far, and then tell us where you see Conduit Capital over the next 18 months or so.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, the past 2021, the past year has been going really well. We've been able to add a ton of new borrowers to our list, a ton of new lenders to our list, and we're getting really great feedback from specifically our the investors that we work with. They're paying us back, so the lenders are happy, and they think the process is streamlined enough that they want to work with us again. Which, that's the best feedback you can get, is when people want to keep their money deployed and keep working with us. So we've been happy with it.
Well, again, one advantage that we have, again, and Tom mentioned, is we've had a lenders list for years that we've worked with, and we've worked on that. We've worked that process out, fine-tuned it, because again, from Olson Group, we want our lenders to have the best experience possible. So, and again, I'm talking about the buy and sell company. We would borrow funds for the rehab, and so we have that process fine-tuned. And more or less, what we've done is more or less copy and pasted that process with some additions and changes and updates to it that makes that same, so more or less what it almost like carries over that good experience over to the new borrower and the new lender. And so as a borrower, that's really good, because again, you're learning what that looks like, and that really helps you again down the road. So getting that experience. So what does the next 18 months or so look like? What are you guys looking to? Is there any changes you're making? Anything you're looking to incorporate?
Sure. So for the next 18 months, we plan on continuing to grow what we're currently doing, and growing our borrowers, growing our lenders, and the amount of loans that we're brokering. Something we're also looking into is forming a fund. So we still plan on brokering in the future, but a fund would just be another product to offer our investors. Because like I think we talked about earlier, Conduit Capital is another great way for investors in the Olson Group network of companies to get their money deployed. You can buy turnkey rentals, you can lend to Olson Group, you can lend to outside borrowers, or we would even have a fund available. So another idea we're working with, still talking with attorneys and making sure that we're able to set it up how it's supposed to be, so that we can get up and running and hopefully offer that in the future.
That's pretty exciting. And so, Olson Group itself, the buy and sell company, we've talked about, you've heard Tom talk many times about going into a second market in Pensacola, and that should be, again, rolling out sometime in 2022. And then now they're talking about the possibility and working through some things there for that fund. And so, excuse me, in the end, we are looking to provide, like you said, as many different opportunities. So you can, technically you can diversify within one market as far as how your money is being deployed. It's not just in an asset technically, or it's not just in lending, and so on. And so these are different ways you can invest with a company. And so if you come and you build a relationship and you come to know, like, and trust the Olson Group network companies, we actually are providing more and more options for you to invest, so you can diversify. And so first of all, I appreciate you joining us on this first ever podcast, and no doubt we'll have you on more as you grow and build it and getting more experience, and maybe even someday have your own podcast, the Conduit Capital podcast or something, which I really like.
Run.
Yeah, and of course, I would expect to be on it many times, adding value.
Of course.
And so for those of you out there that may be interested in in starting your portfolio or moving into a new market. Olson Group does provide rental portfolio options for investors. So if you're looking to do that, we build rental portfolios. So we'd be happy to work with you. And also, if you liked this podcast or this brought you value, we would appreciate a thumbs up, a 5-star review, whatever it is. Tell us how great we are, or whatever it may be. But we really appreciate you joining us. Active Turnkey,
the best way to buy rentals.
There you go. Thanks, guys. Olson Group Network makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice. Unless specifically stated otherwise, Olson Group Network does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such approval or endorsement. Any third-party materials or content of any third-party site referenced in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions, standards, or policies of Olson Group Network. Olson Group Network assumes no responsibility or liability for the accuracy or completeness of the content contained in third-party materials or on third-party sites referenced in this podcast, or the compliance with the applicable laws of such materials and/or links referenced herein.